Fargo is warning residents about a phone scam involving its utility billing department. The callers asked for the customer's social security number, date of birth, and debit card number. A reminder that residents are advised to never give out account numbers, social security numbers, or passwords to anyone they do not trust. If a caller claims to be from a company or government agency, hang up and call the company or agency directly to verify. Anyone who believes they have been scammed should contact the authorities.